Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Yellowjackets Season 2, Episode 7. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Okay, so normally I've tried to break these shows down by the show's episodes down by like going from past stuff to present stuff, but this time I'm going to like blend both past and present, kind of like, because obviously they so heavily influence each other, especially in this episode for certain characters, so I'm going to break it down character by character circumstances. So first and foremost, let's start off with Shauna in the past. Obviously, she's not, none of them are eating, but she is kind of like despondent. She's shut down. Understandably so. Giving birth, there's already plenty enough people who will go through, there's a specific type of depression that happens after you have a baby that is just, it does happen from time to time, that anyone would go through. Well, it's already bad enough, like, you would probably naturally be going through that, but now you add on the fact is, it's a situation of your baby died, especially in Shauna's mind where her baby survived. It's like, right, it's me and you versus the world. You wake up and your baby's gone. She's also haunted by the fact that it feels so vivid to her that she saw everyone kill and eat her baby. So, like, she's so heartbroken and she's so sad and she's so angry because I think there's a part of... I do believe, and it's something I didn't really even think about last episode, I think on some level Shauna feels like she probably deserves this. Because what did she do afterwards? Like, she couldn't talk to anyone about it. She didn't talk to Ty about it. She didn't talk to anyone. What did she do? She tried to go to Jackie. She's like, Jackie, please, I need you here. Come back. But Jackie wouldn't. Jackie didn't pop up again. And she feels even that much more alone because she can't talk to anyone. So it's all building up inside of her, which ultimately leads to her beating the ever-living crap out of Lottie. That scene was brutal, especially when you see Lottie's face in the aftermath. She looks like Mark in the season finale of Invincible. If you've seen Invincible, you know how jacked up Mark got. Looks like that. That is horrendous. I was like, oh, and even Shauna had to be like, Lottie, to make sure she was still alive. Shauna beat the ever-living brakes off of her, which also plays into Shauna's got a lot of deep-seated anger we've kind of seen like run to like the surface, like because everything she's done, even present day, has just been residuals or just the aftermath of the trauma she ensued back then, So, but we'll get to that soon. Well, like I said, it's all part of the conversation because like even taking like her killing Adam, how does she spin that? She's like, no, he attacked me. It's like, Adam didn't attack her. She thought he was a blackmailer and she just went in a kind of autopilot mode and just stabbed him. It's like, he didn't attack her. Like, at the time she thought he was the blackmailer and that everything that they had was fake. And it's just like, it made her snap a little bit. Once again, it was just like this buildup of trauma, just finally, like, it'd been building a building and she hadn't really dealt with it. It had been there, buried the entire time. And now it finally came out in the form of her killing Adam. So it was kind of similar in that regard of just like everything built and built and built until she beat Lottie to a bloody pulp. So, that's just kind of showcasing, like, that's deep inside of Shauna. It's been there ever since. To be fair, the argument could be it was always a part of Shauna. It was just amplified even more in the wilderness. That darkness was always there. Everyone's got some darkness, but it just depends on, once again, we all have we have two wolves inside of us. The good inside of us, the bad inside of us. It just comes down to which one you've been feeding. And all the stuff they've been through in the wilderness has been feeding that bad wolf more and more and more and more. So... But it's like, yeah, we already saw, like, Shauna already had a lot of that behavior, a lot of, like, her darker, like, elements of herself. We're already there with the whole sneaking behind Jackie's back to be with Jeff. Once again, even the whole thing of, I will always remember it. It's like, when they were having sex, like we saw in the show, she was telling Jeff, tell me you love me. You don't even have to mean it. Like, there was something already there that Shauna was trying to fill that void with even before they got lost. And like I said, I think being lost in the wilderness and the darkness of that place just exasperated that even more when you have one traumatic thing after another, after another, after another. Her blow up at Jackie, it did end up in fisticuffs. I can't even say fisticuffs. It was a one-sided beatdown when it came to the Charlotte thing. But the Jackie thing was kind of like in that same ballpark. Once again, it just didn't come down to fist and stuff. Plus, now it's also like Jackie's dead, so you have regrets. You can't apologize for the past. You also helped eat her. You actually started the snowball effect of eating her, because it's like, hey, you ate her ear first, and then like no one else knows that's what you did, except Lottie kind of has an idea because she knows that you sliced Jackie's body beforehand, so that's a whole thing. But yeah. But I'm getting into the nitty gritty of that just to kind of tie into Shauna's, because everyone, you know, at the self-care place has different things that they have to do, they're kind of with their healing process. Shauna's in particular with self-care. It led to her like taking care of a goat, because she didn't want to do that, because she's like, I've seen this enough, especially with colts. You want me to get super close to this goat and then you're going to have me slit its throat. So it's kind of like, yeah. So in that regard, she wasn't about to do that. But obviously the goat got away and she got panicky, so she had Misty kind of helping her trying to find Bruce the goat. But it kind of led to a back and forth between her and Shauna and Misty, where Shauna kind of brought up all Misty being the murderess that she is and stuff like that. But it's like, oh, don't look at me like you're not Miss Innocent either, Shauna. And Shauna's like, what, you don't think I know that? It's a lot of like who I am, what I did back then, how much that's still translating over here to me as an adult all these years later, still being a part of me. And, you know, the goat had eaten a rope, and she's like, right, the goat's not acting right. Like, please, like, tell me, like, let someone check this goat out. The fact of the matter is, I get it's in my care, especially the moment that Todd was like, yeah, it's a baby goat. She's like, what did you say? Because you're like, right, it's a direct parallel with her son that she lost all those years ago. And that's why I was like, oh, the beautiful, like, guy, I wouldn't even say serendipitous, but the symmetry and the parallels of they're trying to like get across in that regard of like, yeah, because it's like this substitute of she never forgiven herself for losing her baby, because how did that relationship start? She's like, I didn't even know I wanted you, and now that she accepted that she wanted the baby ended up dying. And so she ended up pouring her heart out to Lottie, because it's that instinct of like, oh my God, like, I don't know if this goat's okay. Like, what if something happened? It's my job then. You know, I'm only basing all this. I don't know enough about goats. You took my phone, so I can't even look it up, but I don't know if this goat's going to be okay. And that worry and concern and her breaking down in front of Lottie, she opens up about things with Callie. It's like, I've always kept Callie at arm's reach, because she's like, I feel like I'm going to fail her, just like she, in her mind, it's like how I failed my baby. Like, that's why she keeps Callie at an arm's distance, because she's so scared of like, what if she dies? Like, what if I fail her? And that's why they don't have the and maybe on some level Callie has always picked up on that, and maybe that's why she's always kind of been like, she's always been pretty like fine with her dad. Like the way she talks about her dad, it's always like everything's Shauna's fault and never like Jeff's fault. But I think part of that is, I mean, they've kind of like fixed some of that now, but I think that might just be a byproduct of the way Shauna's always treated Callie. I mean, it's just the unfortunate thing of losing a baby in the wilderness, once again trying to come back to this world and like holding on to like trying to like, you know, marrying Jeff and everything was a byproduct of shame and all the stuff related to Jackie that made her go like, I kind of have no choice but to double down on this, plus I got pregnant again. So there's just a lot there. And just Shauna being so vulnerable in that moment of just kind of like, that's what this all stems from. Because it's like, I love my daughter, but I've kept her at arm's length, and I kind of want to change that. Like, because it's all built upon a fear that she's afraid that like her daughter is going to die, like something's going to go wrong. And it's like, I can't bring myself to fully love her, because I'm scared that if I do, that's the moment something's going to happen. Because it happened with her baby when she was dreaming and everything. I didn't want my baby, but now in the moment I wanted my baby, it's like, it's us against the world. Her final words to her baby too, when she ended up burying it, which I immediately was like, the sad thing is, I mean, it's winter, so there's probably not going to be any like animals around, because if there were animals around, they'd be killing and eating them for food. But the wolf, there's no wolves or anything nearby that will probably come and dig up her baby and eat what remains of it. So I don't think that's a concern. But yeah, her final words to her baby is like, it's you and me against the world. So some powerful stuff on that front. Then let's shift over to Misty, which obviously, once again, Misty's kind of excited because she's being considered like the hero again, because Akila's like, yo, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did. Like, things would have been bad if it wasn't for Misty. And it's like, yeah, but it kind of leads into like, it's her, I think her, Jen, and Mari. Because like there are still two girls that we don't really know in the group. There's Jen, and then there's the other there's a blonde amongst the group. They're the only two we really don't know, because they were like part of the like new cast members. You kind of like the people who've gotten more attention this season, like Crystal, but they're going. It might even been Mari being like, yeah, but she's kind of a psycho. How like still and calm she was. No one else was that calm. And it's like, oh, notice how like Misty hasn't said anything about a friend. It makes her seem psychotic, right? So Misty thinks like, oh, I got to use this as an opportunity. I know Kristen's dead. So, well, we got to look for Kristen now that the snow has stopped, which I should also focus on that. They're trying to figure out whether that's a sign or not. Like, oh, there was a break in the snow, maybe the sacrifice of Shauna's baby led to that. Maybe if something happened to Crystal, maybe that's also a thing. But it's like, yeah, but 2 sacrifices, is that really all we're getting for those 2 sacrifices? But a lot of you would be like, no, that's not how the wilderness does. It takes what it wants, but we got something in return, regardless of like what we've lost. We got to keep Shauna alive at the bare minimum. So maybe the same thing's happening in Crystal's case. So they're going out there searching for Crystal. Since we're in the past and everything, and it ties in, there's a whole thing with Ben, which the whole thing with Paul finally, like, this is the most like broken it's gotten, where it's like, yes, his mind's elsewhere about like where, but he was living an alternate life of like if he had never gotten on a plane and never got lost in the wilderness with the kids. But now it's like the worlds are bleeding together, and he's like shaving, and he's like, oh, everything's okay. I'm like, oh, Ben's got it bad. It's like it was already clear he was kind of losing his mind, but it feels like things are really, really bad. And we kind of see that showcasing represented by the fact is Ben was willing to kill himself, because it's just like there's no point, It's just for him, it's like he's lost so much. He can't even escape into the fantasy of him and Paul. And it's like even Paul being like, it's not something you did, but did you really think you could hide out here forever? So I don't think that was just about memory. It was about like the fake memory or just like alternate reality he was living in. I think that was reality bleeding over, and his subconscious being like, yeah, you can't stay here forever. Like maybe if you weren't so trying to like live in your own fantasy, maybe you could have done something to help the baby, or just kind of like maybe that's his mind being like, yeah, give up. Like this little hope and happiness you're holding on to, just give up. Like it's not working anymore. Because like even like Paul got the phone call and being like he's not ready yet, but maybe on some psychological level it was, I don't know if it's the thing that's connected to Javi, that the person he was referencing, that darkness out there that they keep seeing, that Lottie's seeing and everything, but the one that Javi was like, yeah, she told me not to come back or whatever. What if that was her messing with Ben in that regard? Like maybe she was on the other side of that phone, or maybe she was just Paul messing with Ben. Who knows? But he was ready to unalive himself. Misty is trying to pretend like she's trying to look for Crystal. Oh my God, you gotta give it up to Misty. Putting on that performance of like, I lost the baby, I failed the baby, I don't know if I could do it again. Finding, what if we find Crystal and she's blue and stiff like a song stuck in her throat. I was like, bitch, with the poetic way you said that, like that's already suspicious enough. Like, why'd you say that in such a poetic way? Like, you didn't even have to do that, son. And then like Keela's like, no, you go on and go back. And I think it was Mara being like, yeah, sure, leave us to find your friend. And because she had heard back at the cabin, Jen and the blonde-haired girl were talking about like, yeah, I mean, hopefully they find Crystal, but I mean, if they don't, I mean, that means we get to eat. I mean, she's like, not like I want to, but it's like, yeah. The other girl's like, yeah, like, I mean, it'd be a waste. It'd be kind of spitting in the face of the wilderness. It'd be kind of like stabbing it in the back, even though it presented as something like that. So it's like, I'm hoping she's okay. You're like, wow. Because no one else is talking like that except for them. And so that's why Misty wanted to find Kristen's body, because she's like, if I don't find Kristen, then maybe everyone else back here is going to eat her. But when Misty went looking for Kristen, she couldn't find her body. So I'm like, is there an animal out here that got to her? At first, because we saw Ben trip earlier, and I was like, did Ben trip over her body? But it doesn't seem like that's the case. We know for sure she was dead because Misty literally like kind of broke her ribcage trying to give her CPR. So I'm like, blood came out of her mouth and everything. She was super dead. But, I mean, you never know, like, that thing of, hey, maybe you guys died during the plane crash or maybe got reanimated by whatever was out here. That's kind of been thrown out there, so, but that would have already happened to everyone on a plane, so, not less, I don't know, like, who knows if Javi died out there and was kind of revived or something. I don't know. But Misty then found Ben, who was willing to, like, he's just, I'm done, I'm over this. And Misty threw everything she could to try. It's like, if you can't do that, we need your strength. If you do that, they'll eat you. And he's like, yeah, I don't care. So she threw everything she could. Well, if you do that, I'm going to tell them all the stuff that you were trying to do. I'm going to tell them that you're the one that impregnated. I'll tell them all the stuff, you know, that we had a relationship. In fact, I'll tell them worse. Tell them you impregnated Shauna, and then you try to impregnate me, and then she went for as far of a swing as she could go. She's like, I will tell people I will tell your parents, I will tell everyone that you're gay. And he's like, go ahead and do it. Like, I have nothing left to live for. But then Misty broke down, and it was just like, legitimately, please don't do this. I already feel guilty enough because I lost that baby. We have experienced enough death. Please don't add to it. And that was enough to get Ben to back down. So that was interesting. They still haven't resolved the Crystal thing because, like, everyone else still thinks Crystal's missing, so that could still be a future plot point going forward in the next episode or two, depending on how much time they want to keep dedicated to that until they potentially find Crystal's body. Because Misty did check that entire spot because her body was buried exactly where it fell, so the last thing you want is Crystal to magically pop up, especially with the secret you told her. That's probably also going to end up haunting Misty, which all that actually influence and plays a role in Misty's current circumstances. So Misty was kind of like avoiding getting in, like with her treatment, she was kind of supposed to get into like kind of a sensory deprivation chamber, but she kept avoiding it because I guess it's like Missy's kind of always been a bit of a control freak in this regard. Like, she wants to control so much and kind of control the people around her to act the way she wants them to. And so I think for her, it meant kind of surrendering control a little bit. And that's why she was like, well, what if it gets locked? She was trying to make excuses because she didn't want to search within herself. I love that she's like, yeah, I've been here a while. And Lisa was like, you've been here less than 24 hours, lady. Calm the hell down talking about you've been here for a while longer so you know, like, how this place works. But her encounter with Shauna, especially because Shauna's calling her a murderer, and she's like, why does everyone keep calling me that? She's like, because you're training to be the perfect serial killer. It's like, well, to be fair, it's like, that actually makes her the great detective that she is, because she's actually aiming to be a detective and not, like, she's a citizen detective. She's not, you know, a cop. But I think the argument could be, with all the training that a cop goes through, the effed up thing is they could be a proficient enough killer or serial killer because they know enough about what to do. I mean, if it wasn't for her citizen detective stuff, you wouldn't have known how to dispose of Adam's body and everything. That was all Misty, which even she kind of pointed out something that, once again, this group doesn't appreciate her. Yes, Misty is all kinds of jacked up, but at the end of the day, she does do so much for them, and they don't kind of give her respect, because she's even like, I helped you dispose of that Adam thing and you weren't even grateful. And Sean was like, yes, Misty, I am grateful, and said it was a backhanded compliment, because it's like, yeah, I am grateful, but she was super sarcastic about it, because she's like, grateful that you're the perfect serial killer that you are. It's like, that is very disparaging and super jacked up, considering you're the one that popped off by killing Adam. So, but even once again, Shauna recognizes, like, yeah, I'm not an innocent person. But Misty ended up going inside of the chamber and had not one of the weirdest experience in the episode. At first, I was like, there's someone in a bird suit. I was like, is a person in a bird suit going to be Misty? But Misty's there watching it, and it's Walter in the suit and top hat, almost like from a vaudeville almost type of attire, like doing his thing and dancing, and I'm like, what is this? And then, like, there was that moment it didn't even piece together until she was like, Caligula. I was like, I didn't realize the bird was supposed to be Caligula. It takes off its head, and it's a human manifestation now. It's the actor, I'm blanking on his name, but he was, the most recent thing I saw him in was Sandman. So I was like, hey, that's so interesting. Which is also interesting too, because that Sandman has a bird that is personified and has a human voice and everything, because it's voiced by Patton Oswalt. Matthew. Because I was blanking on Matthew's name for a second. But yeah, so it's just interesting how deep that runs. I'm overthinking it, but I just think that's kind of funny. But like Caligula, it's telling her about, because like Missy was like, why does everyone keep calling me a murderer and stuff? She's kind of wondering, like, the fact is, like, she's like, my desperate need for love, does that make me a serial killer or whatever? And it's like, no, you're not a murderer, Misty. You're a closer. And I was like, I love that spin on it. But it's like, yeah, like the fact is that she closed herself off from people because she was worried that, because Missy's had to deal with people not liking her for being her. She was always eccentric before they even got lost. And when did people really like her? When those eccentricities that she has ended up benefiting them in the wilderness up to a certain point. But yeah, it's like, she's always been a little weird and eccentric, but, and she never feels like no one would ever like her because, the one friend she had, she accidentally murdered. And so that kind of feeds into, like, Shauna and them, like, calling her a murderer, and that cuts really deep, But Caligula's words actually, like, resonated with her. And she had that moment with Walter on the phone, like, still in her mind, where he's, like, sending her Morse code through the phone. And it was, like, this beautiful thing of, like, the heart appears over her head, and she's still like, ah. And then she, like, tells Caligula, thank you. And Caligula looks at her and winks and everything. I was like, this section of the show is so weird. So she wakes up, immediately calls Walter, and I thought it was actually really cute. It's like, because all of them have built some walls around them, because Natalie kind of talks about, like, the wall she built up around herself and slowly kind of tearing them down. I mean, she's actually the one that kind of sparked everyone to actually get help, because she's like, this place actually helped me. I had a gun in my mouth until, like, Lottie got there. Granted, let's skip over the fact is that Lottie, like, her people broke in and kidnapped me and dragged me, but we'll skip over those details. Misty knows about that, but, like, yeah, we really don't need to let the other three know about that, so. But Missy was kind of so dorky, because I really like the way she kind of has, like, that dorky, nerdy laugh. Like, she's like, like, she has a laugh like that. I was just like, I was loving it. And she was like, you hang up first. No, I'll hang up first. You hang up first. And it's like, okay, you're going to call me back or whatever. And the moment because Walter didn't pick up the phone, I was like, please don't tell me something happened in between, like, him and Misty's last meeting. Please don't tell me, like, he died or got killed off screen. I hope that's not the case. I also hope he's not playing her, because he's just as eccentric as her, and they actually are, like, a match made in heaven, so I do hope that does work out. Misty's going through a lot, She deserves something good in her life, especially all that she does for everyone else. Like, that's why she goes so above and beyond for people, is because she's overcompensating for, like, filling that own void, like, her own void in her life and her heart. So hopefully things do work out with Walter. So, other than that, we had the Thaisa situation, which in the past she ended up talking to Lottie about what she was going through, and it's like, because Lottie's saying, like, hey, you found Javi, so maybe you can find Crystal too, but it's like, ever since she started doing the circle stuff with Lottie, that other side of herself has stopped. She stopped sleepwalking. She's like, oh, that other side is gone maybe now, but Lottie's like, no, she's still there, and it's a good thing, Thaisa. It's interesting because Ty brought it up to Shauna last season when she told Shauna about, hey, I'm sleepwalking again. It's like, you know how bad that got. Which I don't know if this is supposed to be the worst of it, or whether it's like, nah, there's still bad to come. I don't know about that. It feels like she hasn't done anything bad yet, so that's why I feel like it has to be like something that hasn't happened yet for her to have said that line. But maybe we're past the worst of it, but it doesn't feel like it, because that's so mild in comparison, especially when you compare it to all the, like, killing Sammy's dog and, like, putting it on an altar and stuff. It's like, yeah. Because at the end of the day, Lottie present day is saying, like, hey, that other you isn't trying to hurt your family. It's just lashing out because you keep trying to suppress it. Like, kind of embrace that side of you, because that might not just be another person. It's not like another entity or person. It's you, a side of yourself that is it's a manifestation of maybe your subconscious bubbling towards the surface. It now has a physical and psychological manifestation rather than just being kind of like the intangible thing it was before. It's kind of more tangible now. Maybe it's kind of like, stop embracing it, stop burying it, and let it float to the surface more, Which ties into the van stuff. the Van stuff, like that moment her and Ty had in the past was interesting, where it's like Van has kind of gotten to the point that she had kind of given up a little bit, because for her, like, she's like, I survived so much. There's multiple times I should be dead, but I managed to survive. And because she believed, like, hey, there had to be a reason for it. But now after this baby's death, it's like, maybe I have to find out what is the reason why I'm still here. Like, maybe there really wasn't any reason. Like, I really want to know. Like, start getting very existential in that moment. Because Thais is like, right, you kept me alive. You saved me. But it's like, for Van, it's like, I've got to figure it out for myself. I got to figure out why I'm still here. Like, because she believed, like, maybe there was a divine reason for it, but now she's feeling less and less like that, which pairs interestingly and complicatedly with where Van is present day. Like, her and Thais kind of start making out, and then like Ty stops it because she's like, right, I'm not in position to do that. Van's like, yeah, well, I'm out of time. I was like, no. And it turns out she has cancer. So that's what the meds were for. It isn't like she's just popping pills just to pop pills. I mean, there's probably a little bit of that, but it's also because her mom died of cancer, and now it's like, oh, she's like, how effed up is it that she's dying too? And she's got a couple months. And Thais is like, why didn't you call me? She's like, what? For you to have like your secretary or whatever, or somebody else deliver flowers to me? Like, what would you have really done? Especially because you were living your life. Like, would you really have dropped everything to come check on me? Because it's like, we don't know each other. Once again, like, we know at bare minimum one of the last times they were around each other was at Jeff and Shauna's wedding, because they reference that in episode 5. But beyond that, we don't know how often, like, Ty and Van, like, they probably bumped into each other in those moments when it's like, hey, let's some of us get together, but that's about it. Like, after they got back from the wilderness, or once again, maybe before coming back from the wilderness, they probably broke up, and there's probably big gaps in between them running into each other. This might be the biggest gap, maybe. I don't know. We don't know the full time frame of like their breakup and how often they've saw each other over the past 25 years, you know? I also love that line from Van being like, when she was early on being like, yeah, I'm not sticking around this place. I'm so glad to see you're back from Switzerland, Lottie. And Lottie's like, Switzerland? That was over a decade ago. And they're like, oh, well, I mean, you look good and everything. I was like, damn. I love that everyone keeps being like, oh, like you just got back. Because everyone was like, oh, I thought you were in Switzerland. Yeah, she's like, I was there a decade ago. You guys are... I mean, no one kept up with Lottie, because I'm sure everyone was like, yeah, Lottie's the biggest representation of what we went through. So let's kind of ixnay on hanging around Lottie and ever being reminded of the past. Which, transitioning over to Lottie... she still believes, like, right, we were all brought together because of that thing, that it out there in the wilderness. It brought us all together because we were all damaged and messed up on our own, but us coming together, it's kind of led to us healing. And then her therapist started going buck wild. I was like, what the hell is up with this therapist? Because she started giving some terrible advice, because Lottie's like, no, we shouldn't be around each other, because when we're around each other, we hurt each other. But the therapist was like, nah, you kind of have to give into it, like that. I'm butchering and I'm not paraphrasing correctly, but the therapist was like, yo, give into it. And Lottie's like, what? I was like, what's going on here? And then, like, it presented itself as the being from the wilderness. I was like, oh shit, this is all in Lottie. Wait, have all the appointments been in Lottie's head, or was it just this one? Or was that ever a real thing? Like, that has to be like a real therapist that she goes to. Because I was about to say, like, did you actually leave? Because I was like, because I can't, like, when she had her previous appointments, they were actually in an office and not there at the facility, at the wellness, like, compound and whatever. Or maybe, like, that's why I'm like, have any of your, like, could she actually be a real therapist that you had decades ago that's manifesting herself now and you thought you were still seeing her? Or is she a therapist you are currently seeing? It's just this one instance she wasn't real. I'm leaning into that more so than the others, but I don't know. That's enough to send you spiraling, because it's like, how do you believe anything anymore? Because, like, everything just, like, what's real and what's not. You've been questioning that so much, especially now that your visions have, like, kicked into overdrive and now it's happening, and like that was that thing brought you together, and now it's also like messing with you in this regard, presenting itself like that. It's like, how can you once again trust anything to be real? I thought it was kind of a neat like cut back and forth between Shauna beating the ever living crap out of Lottie and everyone watching, to like all of them, like they were drinking and having fun And then like Van was kind of like, yo, let's start dancing. I love this song. And they all started dancing around the circle, like having fun being around each other again. It was actually really beautiful, but it was kind of an interesting parallel of like, yeah, kind of a low point in the past with what they were up to present day. I am so cute. Well, Misty started talking a little bit about her boyfriend. Well, her Walter. It's like, oh, we don't really. It's like, oh, what does he do? It's like, well, he doesn't really have a job. I mean, probably should have led with the fact is he's actually kind of super rich because he actually has like stock in Taco Bell, despite not going there. Plus, he also like has some like big investments. So he's actually he sued a company and because of his incident because he told us back in episode 4? Was that 3 or 4? He told us about that, and we found out like, oh, he's actually super rich, so he doesn't need to work. Then she try to throw Nat under the bus by being like, yeah, she slept with Kevin. It's like, well, he's not a goth kid anymore. Back to Misty, she should know because she watched it. She's like, I didn't watch those parts or whatever. And then Misty tried to like start a story where she's like, hey, do you remember back that first summer? And they were like, hey, yo, we're not about to go down memory lane about all that traumatic stuff. It's like, were you really about to do that? And Misty was like, you have no idea what I was even about to ask. I am legitimately curious, what was Misty going to say? Nat did bring up something interesting, and this feels like this might be a crucial thing to remember. Maybe, maybe not, but Nat's like, how many of you actually remember everything that went down? Shauna kind of chalked it up to, if my memory's fuzzy, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe there's just some stuff I buried so deep that I don't want to remember. But like, is it just because it's been so long and the trauma of it all? Or could there be kind of a more nefarious reason why you can't remember everything because you're not meant to? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But it feels like that is something pertinent to keep in mind. So with that all said and done, we end with our stinger at the end of the season where Jeff calls Shauna. He's being like trying to be super vague. Hey, Shauna, you know that guy you got in an automobile accident with? Yeah, oh my God, the police found his body in the park. So it's like, cool. And so catching the tiniest bit of next week's preview, yeah, Shauna's going to have, I mean, well, obviously Nat, Misty, and Taissa already know about that, but now it's time to fill in Van and Lottie about the dead body, the blackmail and all that. So their perspective on it is going to be really interesting now that the body's kind of surfaced again. I wonder, will Shauna ever admit, yeah, Adam's not the blackmailer. The actual blackmailer is Jeff. It's like him and Randy blackmailed us. And maybe Misty could be like, hey, I had Walt question Randy about the people in Pearl. I don't know. I'm so excited to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.